The year is 1700. In the heart of mainland Southeast Asia, where three rivers converge to form a natural island, stands a city unlike any other on earth. Ayutthaya, the capital of Siam. At this moment, at the height of its power, it has become what few cities in history ever achieve: a true global metropolis. Over 1 million people live within its waters and walls. Japanese samurai walk streets beside Persian gem merchants. Dutch traders argue with Chinese tax collectors in a pidgin language invented specifically for commerce. French Jesuits debate Buddhism with monks in golden temples. The riverfront is a forest of masts from ships that have sailed from Nagasaki, Batavia, Goa, Bandar Abbas, and ports whose names most Europeans cannot pronounce. This city is larger than Paris, wealthier than Amsterdam, and more cosmopolitan than any capital in Europe. Yet to the west, it remains almost unknown. A rumor, a legend, a place that map-makers mark with uncertain lines and questionable details. But here, in the Kingdom of Siam, Ayutthaya is the undisputed center of Southeast Asian power, the crossroads where the world's trade routes intersect, and the living proof that global cities existed long before the age of European empires. Dawn breaks over an island city embraced by three rivers. The Chao Phraya flows from the northern mountains, the Passak from the northeast plateau, the Lopburi from the eastern highlands. Their convergence creates a natural fortress, but more importantly, a liquid highway connecting the kingdom to every major port from Japan to the Persian Gulf. This geography is power. Control the rivers, control the trade. I control the trade, control Southeast Asia. The riverfront awakens to the sound of transaction. Chinese junks unload porcelain packed in rice straw. Arab dhows carrying Persian carpets anchor beside European merchantmen, riding low with Japanese silver. The customs house, a sprawling compound of teak pavilions, processes wealth that would bankrupt most European treasuries. Every transaction generates revenue. Every ship pays anchorage fees. Every warehouse requires a royal license. The system is elegant, efficient, and ruthlessly profitable. The foreign quarters operate as autonomous zones under royal charter. The Japanese settlement on the eastern bank houses 1,500 merchants and guards who maintain samurai discipline in commercial ventures. They operate rice mills, escort trade caravans, and enforce contracts with a precision that makes them indispensable. The Dutch East India Company commands the prime waterfront, its warehouses storing tin from the Malay Peninsula and deerskins destined for Japan. The English factory sits nearby, perpetually negotiating for advantages the Dutch already possess. The French occupy a fortified mission where Jesuit astronomers serve the royal court, while priests pursue conversions that rarely succeed. The Muslim quarter spreads south of the Palace District. Persian merchants trade in gemstones and carpets. Malay captains sell their navigation expertise to the highest bidder. The mosques operate under the same principle that governs all foreign communities: pay taxes, obey royal monopolies, settle internal disputes without burdening the Siamese courts. Religious freedom exists not from tolerance, but from calculation. Diversity generates profit. Profit strengthens the throne. In the Grand Palace, King Patracha sits beneath a 9-tiered umbrella, the symbol of universal sovereignty. White elephants rest in teak pavilions, their existence interpreted as divine endorsement of the dynasty. But Patracha knows his power rests on something more tangible than cosmic symbolism. 3 years ago, he seized this throne by force, executing his predecessor's advisors and expelling French troops from their fortifications. Now he must prove that power taken can be power held. The kingdom watches. The foreign merchants calculate. And in the throne room, every ceremony reinforces the hierarchy that keeps 1 million people from tearing this experiment apart. The roots of Ayutthaya's power lie in mud and monsoon. For 10,000 years, the Chao Phraya River has deposited rich alluvial soil across its delta, creating rice paddies of extraordinary fertility. 2 harvests per year generate massive surplus. Surplus creates armies that don't farm, bureaucrats who don't fight, merchants who don't grow food, and kings who tax the entire system. Geography gave Siam the foundation. Human ambition built the empire. In 1351, King Yu Thong abandoned smallpox-ravaged Lop Buri and founded his capital on this river island. The location offered natural defense and perfect access to maritime trade routes. Within 2 generations, Ayutthaya had absorbed the architectural grandeur of Angkor, the maritime traditions of Malay sultanates, and the tributary protocols of the Chinese imperial system. The city became a mandala state, power radiating outward in concentric circles, binding vassal kingdoms through combinations of military threat and economic incentive. By 1511, when the Portuguese conquered Malacca, Ayutthaya was already the dominant power in mainland Southeast Asia. The Portuguese came north offering guns and military technology. The Siamese kings purchased both, employed Portuguese mercenaries, and granted limited trading privileges while ensuring no single European power gained strategic advantage. When the Spanish arrived from Manila, when the Dutch established their East India Company presence in 1604, when the English finally appeared in 1612, the pattern was set. Europeans competed for Siamese favor. Siamese kings played them against each other with calculated precision. The trade goods flowing through Ayutthaya's customs houses map global connections. Japanese silver purchases Chinese silk. Indian cotton travels to the Malay archipelago. Persian horses exchange for Siamese war elephants. Deerskins from Thai forests reach Japan by the shipload, feeding demand for leather in a culture that forbids slaughtering 4-legged animals. Tin from the Malay Peninsula is smelted in Chinese-operated foundries. Sapphires from Chantaburi mines are cut by Indian craftsmen and sold to Persian merchants who carry them overland to Isfahan. The king holds monopolies on strategic exports: rice, tin, hides, ivory. Foreign merchants must purchase royal licenses to trade. Ships pay anchorage fees calculated by tonnage and cargo value. Warehouse permits require annual renewal. Every exchange generates revenue flowing to the palace treasury. The customs revenues exceed what most European monarchs extract from their entire kingdoms. This wealth finances the army, the bureaucracy, the temples, and the ceremonies that demonstrate cosmic authority. But the system requires constant management. Vassal states from Chiang Mai to Nakhon Si Thammarat send tribute acknowledging Ayutthaya's supremacy. In return, they receive protection from Burmese invasion, access to trade networks, and legitimacy derived from association with the great king. The arrangement benefits both sides, but only as long as the center remains strong. Weakness invites rebellion. Rebellion invites intervention. And intervention, in this age of European expansion, means colonization. The Siamese court understands this calculus perfectly. King Narai, who ruled from 1656 to 1688, had welcomed European technology and advisors. He employed Greek adventurer Constantine Falcon as his chief minister, granted the French military positions, and pursued diplomatic relations with Louis XIV. The strategy was sophisticated: play European powers against each other, adopt their astronomy and cartography, purchase their weapons, but never surrender strategic control. It failed. In 1688, as Narai lay dying, Falcon's enemies accused him of planning to convert the kingdom to Catholicism and deliver it to French control. The accusations may have been false, but the fear was real. Court official Petracha led a coup, executed Falcon, expelled French troops from their fortifications at Bangkok and Mergui, and seized the throne. The revolution was bloody, but swift. Foreign influence was purged. Siamese sovereignty was reasserted. Now, in 1700, Petracha rules a kingdom turned cautious. Trade continues but under stricter supervision. European companies maintain factories but with reduced privileges. The lesson has been learned. Engagement with global powers requires constant vigilance. Technology can be purchased without surrendering autonomy, but the price of independence is eternal suspicion. The Chinese merchant community emerges as the unexpected victor of Petracha's revolution. While European influence contracts, Chinese networks expand. Merchants from Fujian and Guangdong operate tax farms, control customs revenues, and dominate the most profitable trade routes. They speak Thai, marry into Siamese elite families, and convert to Buddhism while maintaining ancestral shrines in their compounds. They are becoming something new, neither fully Chinese nor fully Siamese, but a hybrid commercial class that will define the kingdom's economic future. The system operates through revenue farming. The king auctions the right to collect specific taxes to the highest bidder. Chinese merchants bid aggressively, offering guaranteed revenues in exchange for collection rights. They then extract maximum profit from the difference between what they pay the throne and what they collect from merchants. The system is efficient, corrupt, and wildly profitable for everyone involved. The king receives predictable income without maintaining a massive bureaucracy. The tax farmers become wealthy beyond imagination, and the foreign merchants pay, grumbling about corruption while recognizing that predictable corruption is better than arbitrary confiscation. Or in the Dutch factory, the opperhoofd, the chief factor, reviews account books that tell a story of frustration and profit. The company has operated here for nearly a century. They've survived wars, coups, and constantly shifting royal policies. Their relationship with the Siamese court follows a predictable pattern. The Dutch request monopoly privileges. The court grants limited concessions. The English immediately protest. The court balances competing demands while ensuring no single power becomes indispensable. The Dutch factors understand their pieces in a larger game, but the profits are too substantial to withdraw. The English East India Company maintains a smaller operation, chronically jealous of Dutch advantages. Their factors send reports to Madras and London complaining about Siamese duplicity and Dutch conspiracy. What they don't understand is that they're experiencing not conspiracy, but sophisticated statecraft. The Siamese court has no intention of granting monopolies to any European power. Competition keeps prices high and foreign influence fragmented. The English will continue to receive just enough privilege to remain engaged, just enough frustration to prevent complacency. The French mission presents a different challenge. After the 1688 revolution, French military forces were expelled, but Jesuit priests remained. They serve the court as astronomers, cartographers, and technical advisors. They conduct mass for a small community of Vietnamese converts and a handful of Siamese courtiers curious about European religion. Their conversion efforts produce minimal results. Buddhist Siam absorbs Christian theology as intellectual curiosity, not spiritual truth. The priests debate philosophy with monks in conversations that are genuinely scholarly and completely unproductive for missionary purposes. The palace bureaucracy operates with Byzantine complexity. The king sits at the apex, but actual governance flows through ministerial offices controlling specific domains: trade, military affairs, palace administration, provincial governance, religious institutions. Officials purchase their positions, then recoup investment through fees, commissions, and carefully calibrated corruption. The system is understood by all participants. As long as corruption remains within acceptable bounds, As long as royal revenues continue flowing, the machine operates smoothly. Provincial governors function as semi-autonomous rulers bound by tribute obligations and military alliances. The governor of Nakhon Si Thammarat controls the southern peninsula, collecting taxes from Malay sultanates and regulating the tin trade. The governor of Chiang Mai commands the northern territories, managing relations with Burmese kingdoms and Shan states. They send tribute to Ayutthaya, tin, lacquerware, forest products, and receive in return military protection, trade access, and the legitimacy that flows from royal recognition. But they maintain their own courts, armies, and internal administration. Ayutthaya's power is real but negotiated, enforced through combinations of military threat and economic benefit. The vassal system extends beyond Siamese territory. The king of Cambodia sends tribute acknowledging Ayutthayan supremacy. Malay sultanates from Patani to Kedah recognize the overlordship of the northern throne. Lao principalities navigate between Siamese and Vietnamese spheres of influence, playing both against each other while maintaining internal autonomy. The entire structure resembles nested circles of power, each level maintaining sovereignty within constraints imposed by the level above. But by 1700, cracks appear in the foundation. Burma, under the restored Taungoo dynasty, is recovering from decades of internal conflict. Burmese armies have historically threatened Ayutthaya's northern and western frontiers. Previous invasions in 1569 captured the city, destroyed temples, and carried thousands into slavery. The memory shapes Siamese strategic thinking. Military preparations focus on the Burmese threat. Fortifications strengthen the western approaches. Vassal states in the north receive weapons and military advisors. The court watches Burma with the attention reserved for existential threats. The European powers represent a different category of danger. They want monopolies, extraterritorial rights, and eventually territory itself. The Portuguese seized Malacca. The Spanish conquered the Philippines. The Dutch controlled Java and the Spice Islands. The English are building their empire in India. The pattern is clear. Commercial presence precedes political control. Political control becomes colonial administration. Siam has avoided this fate through careful diplomacy, playing powers against each other, granting enough access to maintain relationships while denying enough to prevent dominance. Petraeus' 1688 revolution crystallized the strategy. Expel foreign troops. Restrict missionary activity. Maintain commercial relationships, but under Siamese terms. The policy works, but it requires constant vigilance. Every trade negotiation becomes a test of sovereignty. Every diplomatic exchange measures the balance between engagement and subjugation. The monsoon arrives with its annual violence, flooding streets and transforming the city into a network of canals. Commerce adapts without pause. Sampans replace foot traffic. Transactions continue in the deluge. The flooding is not disaster, but rhythm, the predictable cycle that structures agricultural production and urban life. Ayutthaya exists in balance with water, built to survive annual inundation. Its power derived from managing what others would consider catastrophe. By 1700, Ayutthaya has settled into a new equilibrium after the trauma of revolution. The throne is secure. The foreign merchants have accepted reduced privileges. The Chinese community has filled the vacuum left by European contraction. The system works, generating wealth, maintaining order, and preserving sovereignty in an age when most Asian kingdoms are losing theirs. But the easy cosmopolitanism of earlier decades has hardened into something more calculated. The Japanese quarter ages and contracts cut off from replenishment by the Tokugawa closure. The European factories operate under stricter supervision, their factors aware that privileges once granted can be revoked. Only the Chinese networks expand, their merchants becoming indispensable to the kingdom's commercial infrastructure. The bureaucracy has learned to manage global engagement. Foreign communities operate under clear legal frameworks. Muslims follow Islamic law in internal matters, but acknowledge royal courts for commercial disputes. Christians maintain their churches but conduct no public proselytizing. The Japanese enforce their own discipline without creating a separate military power. Each community understands the boundaries. Step outside them and privileges disappear. The trade continues, perhaps even intensifies, but under Siamese control. Royal monopolies on strategic goods ensure the throne captures maximum value. Tax farming generates predictable revenues without requiring massive administrative expansion. The customs house processes ships from 3 continents, its officials fluent in the protocols of global commerce and the principles of Siamese sovereignty. The temples still dominate the skyline, their gilded prangs catching dawn light, eye visible for miles across the flat delta. Monks still chant evening prayers. The Buddhist calendar still structures daily life, but the kingdom has absorbed a harder wisdom. Foreigners bring technology and ambition. Their promises of partnership conceal desires for control. Engagement is necessary but dangerous, requiring constant vigilance and the willingness to expel those who overstep. The rice paddies still flood with the monsoon, still produce the surplus that makes everything else possible. The rivers still carry ships from distant lands, but Ayutthaya in 1700 is a city that has looked into the future and chosen preservation over expansion, continuity over transformation. The question is whether this choice will prove wise or merely delay the inevitable. Provincial governors maintain their semi-autonomy, bound to the center by tribute and mutual interest. Vassal states send lacquerware and tin, receiving in return protection and legitimacy. The entire structure operates on consent as much as coercion, on calculation as much as force. As long as the center appears strong, the periphery remains bound. But strength requires demonstration, and demonstration requires resources, and resources require the trade that brings foreign powers into the kingdom's heart. The contradiction is apparent to sophisticated observers. Ayutthaya needs global trade to maintain its power. Global trade brings foreign merchants who eventually want political control. Managing this tension defines statecraft in the age of European expansion. Siam has done it successfully for 2 centuries. The question hovering over the throne in 1700 is how much longer the balance can be maintained. Ayutthaya would stand for another 67 years. In 1767, Burmese armies would breach the walls, burn the temples, melt the gold, and reduce the city of spires to ruins that still speak of vanished glory. The capital would move downriver to Bangkok. The libraries would burn. The chronicles would fragment. Much would be lost. But what was created here survives in principle, if not in stone. The idea that a Southeast Asian state could engage with global powers on its own terms, could adopt foreign technology without surrendering indigenous sovereignty, could build prosperity through trade rather than conquest. This persists. Modern Thailand inherits Ayutthaya's diplomatic flexibility, its strategic calculation, so its ability to preserve independence by bending rather than breaking. The ruins attract tourists who photograph broken prangs and headless Buddhas without always understanding what they represented. This was a city that rivaled London in population, that traded as equals with powers across 3 continents, that proved Asian kingdoms could master the arts of diplomacy and commerce as skillfully as any European state. For 2 centuries, Ayutthaya dictated terms to some of the most powerful empires on earth. The lesson isn't about avoiding destruction. All cities eventually fall. It's about the agency available even to kingdoms far from European centers of power. Geographic advantage, agricultural surplus, and diplomatic skill created space for autonomous development. Ayutthaya demonstrated that the European age of expansion was not inevitable, that Asian kingdoms had choices, and that some made those choices brilliantly for centuries. The global city that existed here in 1700 offers a different narrative than the familiar story of European dominance and Asian submission. It shows a world where power was more evenly distributed, where sophisticated non-European states set terms of engagement, where technology and ideas flowed in multiple directions. That world was fragile, ultimately unsustainable against the combined force of European industrial and military revolution. But it existed, and its existence matters. Ayutthaya in 1700 was not a curiosity or an exception. It was a fully realized global city operating at the highest level of contemporary statecraft and commerce. That it fell doesn't diminish what it achieved. It reminds us that greatness is temporary, that power shifts, and that the centers of civilization are never where we assume they'll remain forever.